Are y'all ready to get back to the roots where I butcher an intro and then we get into it?
That sounds cool.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right. Welcome back to Rough Draft Research, everybody. I'm AJ, joined here with Daniel and Christian. Pause for applause. What's up, boys? We have a great episode planned for you guys today. If you've been following along with the previous episodes, we've been putting out 2 a week, splitting them up. We've been doing the studs, duds, and average spuds. Copyright Daniel Whitmore. We did the third-year dudes, so the 2020 class. We did the second-year dudes, the RDR favorite, the Forever 2021 class. And that brings us to rookies, and that's kind of why we do this shit, boys. It's a Dynasty podcast, so we're going to bring you the rookies. Same situation. We're going to be signing these starters, holds, duds, but with a twist, everybody. We're going mano-y-mano. College guru versus prowessly practical. Prospect truther versus situational realist.
Ooh.
It is the rookie expectation episode. College production versus NFL situation. Edition. Daniel versus Christian. But here's the thing. These guys don't really know who they're talking about. So this will be a reveal. We're going to kind of ping pong back and forth. And if we link up on stuff, I think we're going to call those synchronized studs. So with that said, I feel like college production is pretty self-explanatory. So let's start with Christian. Kind of, I guess, explain what you're looking for in NFL situation and start with your first guy, dude.
Yeah, so basically I took this as kind of an experiment to look on the history of teams and less about players and see kind of how the teams tend to draft and how they tend to utilize their weapons that they get in the draft, and see what we can kind of expect throughout their rookie year. Are some teams more likely to let rookies kind of go off and then others want to wait, kind of stuff like that. And I wanted to start with, let's have some fun. Let's start with a superstar. I was going to start with Ken Walker. He does prefer to go by Ken now, by the way. In case you're curious. Part of this, to be honest with you guys, is I'm probably going to end up with him in our Superflex League, and I wanted to find a reason to be excited about him. And I think I definitely did. And it involves Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll has spoken really, really highly about Ken Walker, already saying that basically they saw him on film, they saw him play football, and they were good with all that. They just wanted to talk to him and learn how he was going to pick things up. And they're ready to roll. So they believe in this guy. And we really do need to talk about Pete Carroll because he's instrumental in getting Russ out of town. Then he drafts an offensive lineman and a pure runner as a running back. And everyone's starting to infer, okay, well, Pete Carroll wants to get back to the glory days of Seattle rushing football, right? If you look back on Pete Carroll's career, 2010, his first season was rough. But in 2011, Marshawn Lynch went off for 1,200 yards and 12 touchdowns. In 2012, he had 1,590 and 11 touchdowns. In 2013, he had 1,200 yards, 1,257 yards and 12 touchdowns. 14, he had 1,306 and 13 touchdowns. And then in 2014, Marshawn Lynch went down, but him and Thomas Rawls combined for 1,200 yards. And that's kind of when it went off the rails for Seattle. They barely scraped 1,000 yards combined between Kristen Michael, Thomas Rawls, Alex Collins, and CJ Porcice the very next year. Then 2017, Russell Wilson led the team in rushing with 586 yards. Eddie Lacy was on that team, if anybody remembers that. Then you had 2 awesome years of Chris Carson, followed up by 2 injury-plagued years by Chris Carson with no 1,000-yard rusher. I think it is clear. I think Seattle does want to start running the ball more. They want to build from that up. I guess Pete Carroll's under the assumption that that's what helped the Seattle team win the Super Bowl, with the play action and having the running game of Marshawn Lynch combined with the passing game of Russell Wilson. So he took advantage of getting a stud at running back in the second round at the very beginning. And if you look at Walker, the worst parts of his game are pass blocking and the lack of receiving work. Guess who's not going to fucking throw the ball a lot this year? Apparently, it's Seattle. So his two biggest issues don't really matter that much. If you look at Walker's kind of stats, his yards after contact are 1,100 yards last season, 1,168. And he had a 4.5 yards after contact per attempt. So you know he can handle the workload, he can handle the contact. And it's honestly made me a lot more excited looking at the history of Pete Carroll's rushing game and seeing that it does work. The way he does it works if he has a bell cow there, and he just got one in Walker. And with Chris Carson's injury reports coming back up, I don't really see how Walker doesn't take it and just dominate, at least in his rookie year.
Man, yeah, that's the whole thing, right? The Pete Carroll effect on, when he goes after a running back, it's like, okay, like I'm all about that. I like it. I like how you're coming to terms, with your.
I have to.
Yeah, that's real. It's really
all
cool.
Those points.
I mean, you guys know I did a little tilting on the 101 with the Kenneth Walker, and it was completely had everything to do with what you were laying out, man. All right, man. If you're going off the top, let me just get your next draft pick out of the way for you. All right.
Okay.
You talk about I'm talking about Drake London. Like the guy that I'm pretty stoked about. Is this a synchronized stud or?
I had him on the list initially, and I pivoted because I wanted to talk about some guys that we haven't talked about as much necessarily.
No, I didn't do.
So I pivoted a little bit.
I'm in. That's cool, man. Well, all right. So, I mean, the thing with my approach on this is I'm looking at guys. I'm looking at their size. I'm looking at their combine metrics. I'm looking at their production as far as what they did in college. And I'm trying to look for some strong comps and see if these guys are really on track to be badasses. And with Drake London, it's crazy, If you look at his size and you look at the lack of a combine, then you're pretty much just left with whatever you want. The imagination can run wild. And that, my friends, is exactly what has happened in this situation. Let me just give you a couple of names here. Drake London. So obviously he was a first round draft pick. He was picked 8th overall. So in the first round, to get a guy that weighs almost 220 pounds as a top 10 pick, there are a couple examples of that throughout history. Let me throw a couple of them at you, and then I'll narrow down to one. You have Julio Jones. You have Larry Fitzgerald. Yeah, you've got Mike Evans. And, you got Kevin White as well. So it's not all badass, but
there has to be somebody that's the exception to prove the rule. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, of course. So, I mean, I'm just looking at these names. Allen Robinson, Kenny Golladay, Cortland Sutton, these guys are all day 2 guys that match up size-wise. So it's a pretty good thing to be a big wide receiver that's productive. It's pretty much awesome. But we know Julio's too fast. You can't really make that comparison. Mike Williams, deep threat. He does a lot of things Drake London wishes he could do, right? Maybe that would be the total package. So I'm really going to hone in on Mike Evans. And everyone's been saying, he's the new Mike Evans. And he's shy on the weight. And a couple of other things that got me thinking that what didn't really add up was maybe the college production. But after digging into the college production, I see that they are actually really, really, really close. So let's just talk about what Drake London did in college. He only played in 22 games, and that was over the course of 3 years. He had an injury-shortened year as well as a COVID year. And then Mike Evans played 2 years with A&M, but in that he played 26 games. So it's pretty comparable. And if you look at yards per game, London had 97 to Evans 96, and touchdowns per game, you had 0.65 for Evans and 0.68 for Drake London. So that's matching up really well as far as the size. Yeah. And then we have the projected 40 time for Drake London is like a 4.55, which, is right around there for Mike Evans as well. He officially ran a 4.53. Okay. So right apples to apples with that. So that's pretty awesome. This is another reason why you have to throw out Larry Fitzgerald, who had 34 touchdowns in 26 games at Pitt. Jesus. That's insane.
He's a
Larry
monster.
Fitzgerald is amazing.
He's the man.
I'm very, very happy. But not to steal into your side of things as far as the pro situation, but I did a little digging on the Mike Evans situation. And if you look at Drake London, all right, he's going to Atlanta, kind of a questionable quarterback situation with Calvin Ridley's suspension. You have a void there in the wide receiver room. So I'm looking at what Mike Evans dealt with coming into the league, and he walks into a team that is got Mike Glennon under center, and and so the next year it's a Josh McCown, Mike Glennon combo, but Vincent Jackson is there. And before Mike Evans got there, Vincent Jackson had 160 targets, and that was pretty awesome. But Mike Evans comes in and manages to get 122 targets, and pretty much it's a two-man show, Vincent Jackson and Mike Evans. And so I see a kind of a similar role going for Drake London with Kyle Pitts there. And so they can do, 1 for 1 as far as being the two main shows. But another thing to note is that Mike Evans had 12 touchdowns that rookie year, and that's kind of been his thing throughout his career. And I think Drake London could slot right in there to get double-digit touchdowns as a rookie. So he'll be playing with possibly Marcus Mariota, and then you got Desmond Ridder. So it's hard to make a straight comparison. No Mike Glennons are out there really today. Yeah. They don't really let people get away with that anymore. Yeah. So I just looked at that, and a lot of things kind of matched up to give me the even I don't have Drake London anywhere, and I doubt I'm going to be able to get him anywhere. But he's got all green lights for me, man, especially when you look at that Mike Evans comp. So that's what's up, man.
Oh, yeah. I was going to write about Drake London. He's going to a team that has a history of drafting really good number one receivers. Julio Jones, Rachaad White come to mind for guys that kind of dominate and can play with other people. Those two guys played with each other for a while.
Well, shoot, let's go on to the next guy. Go ahead, Christian. Who you got?
Yeah, I got a quick little one here because it's more just targeted specifically at Josh Allen. And I'm going to stick in the wide receiver room, and we're going to talk a little Khalil Shakir here. I don't know if we overlapped on that one, but
almost. I pulled it out.
Khalil Shakir had 417 pass snaps in college last year, and 320 of them were from the slot. Cole Beasley is now gone, but look at Cole Beasley's targets under Josh Allen. In 2019, he had 106 targets. In 2020, he had 107 targets. In 2021, Cole Beasley still pulled out 112 targets, even with his COVID situation going on, and you'd think people wouldn't want to get near him, but apparently Josh Allen didn't care that much. So it's obvious. Josh Allen loves his fucking slot guys. He's going to target him 100 times a year. He's been doing it since 2019. No reason to think he's going to stop. PFF has Khalil Shakir listed as a third-round pick, and he went in the fifth to the Bills. So they could be getting a steal here. And if the only person for Shakir to beat for that spot is Jamison Crowder. And he's a 29-year-old guy. He's a really, really good player. He's had a lot of really good years. But it's not impossible to think that Khalil Shakir could come in and beat Jamison Crowder out for that spot. And if he does that, Josh Allen has shown that he's going to look for the guy in the slot at least 100 times a year. So I'm all on board for getting Khalil Shakir late, especially where he's going in most drafts. I don't even know. Did he go drafted in ours or did he go in the second?
He was drafted in the third.
Yeah, he's drafted in the
Was
third.
it the third?
Like
okay, so he went in
mid-third.
ours, but not till the third round. If you can snag this guy and just hold on to him and wait for him to become Josh Allen's slot guy, I think that's going to be a thing running forward for the next however long Josh Allen's career is. Because those are too consistent of numbers to just drop off suddenly unless there's a huge injury or something.
Well, I love that, man. I'm very excited about that. All right, for my next guy, I got a little weird. I got a little weird with what I did here. It's kind of like, I don't know. It's a weird one, but I'm going with Rachaad White. Do you have him on your list?
I do not.
Oh,
Thought about it though.
Yeah, sure. So he spent some time at JuCo and then ultimately ended up with Arizona State and had kind of a weird first year that was extremely efficient and then balled out his last year there. And it kind of reminded me of another guy I know that spent some time at the Hutchinson Community College.
Oh,
The Kansas JuCo player that went to Tennessee. His name was Alvin Kamara. Yeah. So
dun, dun.
it's kind of wild. This is one where I watched a little bit of the film, just like the Tennessee film on Kamara and a little bit of the Rachaad White. And I don't know, it's not like a stretch, but I could see it. I could see it being possible. So I was talking about the first year Rachaad White had. He had, a 10-yard per carry average on 42 carries. And then his catching average was 18.9. So it was insane, right? Like 10 yards per carry consistently. And then, it was only 8 catches, but 18.9 yard average. There was only one 55-yard touchdown. Anyway, this is a 4-game season. So he kind of like hit pretty hard. And then in 2021, he had, 15 touchdowns and 1,000 yards. And it was very similar to how Kamara came into Tennessee and took over. In my eyes, I saw a pretty similar comparison. And then he ended up in New Orleans, right? And he's playing with Mark Ingram, and he's, third-round pick, kind of buried on the depth chart a little bit for that first year. But then he established himself and pretty much took over the next year. And I'm looking at Leonard Fournette, and I'm looking at Rachaad White, and I just think that he has the potential with his play style and kind of the explosiveness that he has to get on the field and stay on the field. It's similar to the Kamara thing. So it's not as concrete as my Drake London. Like they don't get that concrete. But it's kind of like a weird optimism I have. Rachaad White, the player, always was a fan of, but now I'm coming around on the landing spot a little bit too.
Oh, nice. Finally. Yeah, dude, I like it. That's a good one. I never would have thought about. I'm going to have to watch him with new eyes now and see if I see any Alvin Kamara in his game.
It's weird. Like they both have, and the size and the speed are pretty similar. Kamara's slower. But just like the weird upright run style, but the agility in space, it's very similar. Like they both run kind of like wide outs, but it's weird.
Then, that speaks to how good they are in the receiving game as well. Like maybe you just found something that we can start looking out for future like receiving backs. Maybe that higher running style translates.
All right.
Think about that.
Back over to you, Christian. Who you got, man?
All right. I'm sticking in the NFC South for a little bit. We're going to go with Mr. Smoov, Chris Olave.
Yeah.
Pretty excited about him. As anyone that listened to this podcast knows, he was my, I think, dream pick for the Packers. If they could have traded up and got him, would have been awesome. Unfortunately, they did not. He went to New Orleans. And you know what? Jameis Winston really was killing it over the first 7 games of last season, huh? 14 touchdowns to 3 interceptions, almost 1,200 yards, a quarterback rating of 102.8. Obviously, everything falls off the rails when Winston went down with the injury. So, you know, it started off pretty good and then it fell off the rails. So you don't know how much you can hit on them. No receiver was over 700 yards this year. Everyone expected Marquez Callaway to have the breakout season. That didn't happen. He was still their leading receiver, so he had a good year, but just nothing spectacular. And then obviously the huge X factor with Chris Olave is Michael Thomas. He's only played 7 games over the last 2 seasons. He hasn't stepped on the field since 2020, but he's still a factor because New Orleans has kind of been looking for that over-the-top burner to go with Michael Thomas in their offense for a while now. I don't know whether to chalk it up to Breeze kind of losing his arm strength or them just literally not finding the right guy. But the best season they've had as a number 2 receiver to Michael Thomas was in 2017 when Ted Ginn had 787 yards. Ooh. Every year after that, the number 2 didn't even crack 500 yards. So that's been an issue that they're trying to address in this offense. They need some speed on the outside to take the top off the defense. They tried it with Ted Ginn. They tried it with Deontay Harris. Didn't work. So now they're swinging for the fences, trading a shit ton of picks to go up and get Chris Olave. And I think it's going to work. I think they finally figured it out because there's only one time that Michael Thomas split really well with another receiver, and that was his rookie year with Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks also had 1,000 yards. Michael Thomas had a really good rookie season, but I don't count that as like him being Michael Thomas's number 2 because Cooks was the number 1 guy. So I think if Thomas is on the field, if he ever plays football again, we don't know what's going on with him injury-wise or sometimes headspace-wise. And if that works, though, Jameis is going to be able to open this offense up. He can throw the ball. Regardless of how you feel about Jameis, he can get it down the field farther than Drew Brees could in the later period of his career. Olave is an absolute burner that if Thomas is on the field, Thomas will be able to take pressure off of him. And I think they can finally get back to that 2017 Michael Thomas, Brandon Cooks combo that they had going. And I think it can work. I think Chris Olave has a really good chance to have the best rookie season of any of the wide receivers. I think he's going to argue with Drake London for that spot. I think he's going to argue with Treylon Burks for that spot. But those are my 3 guys that I think are probably going to have the best rookie seasons this year. And yeah, I just like Olave a lot and where he landed, even though it was a kind of disappointing on the day.
So I have some like good deep Drake London style ones, and then I got some touch and go, just kind of like this is something that jumped out at me, but I didn't spend as much time going off on it. And so I'm going to talk about George Pickens.
Ooh.
Yeah. And
sound the alarm.
Oh, we got a super duper do.
Whatever it's called, whatever the fuck he said it was.
Yeah, synchronized studs, man.
Woo, woo, woo.
Yeah,
we got our first synchronized stud.
Yeah, boy, a synchronized superstar. Well, this would be perfect because mine is a little soft, so you can pick it right up where I drop it off on your doorstep. And so for me, he does compare kind of similarly to Stephon in the metrics. You know, Stephon's a little... You know, he's a little bit shorter, but as far as the size and the speed, it's pretty spot on. But the guy I really think that he compares to in potential as well as metrics and a little bit of the college production is actually Tyler Boyd. And this is another one where I watched some film, and they have some pretty serious similarities in their play style. Okay. As far as aggressiveness and just having like really good hands and contested catch and just the reach to bring a ball down. And then I also thought a little bit about the Tyler Boyd 3-headed monster and kind of the second fiddle situation. And it reminded me a little bit of what he could run into in Pittsburgh. Yeah. So that's where I hand it to you, my friend.
Yeah. So I wanted to do this one. I think Pittsburgh, Kevin Colbert specifically has been a really good GM for 20 years. So it's always interesting when these teams go after these guys. It makes me honestly, like if you listen to the podcast, you kind of heard that George Pickens was not necessarily one of my guys. When a team like Pittsburgh takes him, it makes my ears perk up and makes me want to pay more attention because I know they know what they're doing. And let's just put it this way. Kevin Colbert's really good at drafting receivers. Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, Juju Smith-Schuster, Emmanuel Sanders, Antonio Brown. Those are all his picks, and he nailed all of them. So he wants to put a cap on the end of his career. He just retired. This was his last draft. He wants to draft the two faces of the franchise in Kenny Pickett and George Pickens. And there's a pretty good chance that he has drafted those two faces. So the other thing about Pittsburgh's receivers is it's pretty interesting because they start fairly quickly as younger guys. Outside of their rookie season, it's kind of weird. If given the chance, Antonio Brown had 124 targets in his second year. To be fair, he kind of fucked up Emmanuel Sanders' whole start because they were taken in the same draft, and Antonio Brown came as a 6th-round pick and just took that job. So it kind of fucked up Emmanuel Sanders, but even by year 3, Emmanuel Sanders was pulling down 75 targets. Marcus Wheaton in year 2 had 86 targets. Even James Washington in year 2 had 80 targets. Juju had 166 in his second year. And, the list goes on. But if you notice that trend right there, obviously you're hearing a lot of year two, because they didn't really do much their rookie years typically. The only guys that were really able to get it going in Pittsburgh on their rookie year, Juju had 79 targets in year 1. But then you have Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson who really crushed it. Yeah. Claypool with 109 targets and Deontay with 92. But honestly, if you look at it, Deontay Johnson was kind of forced into that role. Juju Smith-Schuster had an injury, and the James Washington experiment just kind of failed. And it forced Deontay Johnson kind of into that big dog role, and he produced in it, and they kept using him. So I think you may end up needing to wait a year for true, special George Pickens production, because those two guys are there. Claypool and Deontay Johnson are both there, and he doesn't need to be that guy. But if it's not a rookie first-year start for Pickens, which it very well could be, I definitely see him blowing up year 2, year 3. He's going to start going with Kenny Pickett. And, I mean, that's a huge if factor here, too. Kenny Pickett has to not suck. But if he's good, which I think he will be, I think Pickens explodes and continues this lineage of great Steelers wide receiver drafts.
So, yeah. All right. So, Tyler Allgeier, we all know him and we all love him. The BYU kind of touchdown monster, right? He hits the spot in Atlanta where it's like, hey, what's going to happen? Nobody knows. See what you got, guy. I got pretty excited about him just given the opportunity and the fact that he was just crushing it on the touchdown game. He posted a TD rate of 8.4% over the past 2 years, which is pretty good. That's pretty good.
Pretty good.
And so, given the size and the speed and the college production, I have actually a really, really strong comparison to Ajayi with him.
Okay.
Yeah, it's spooky similar actually. Who had a TD rate of 7.7%, and he was with the Boise State, I believe. And so, the thing that breaks my heart though when I talk about Jay Ajayi is it didn't translate to the NFL so much for him. He crushed it in the college production. He was the kind of a grinder, get in the end zone. But his best NFL season was 8 touchdowns. And then his second best was 3 touchdowns. And he never really got off the ground. Never really played too consistently. And he ended up, in Miami, where he had some competition with Lamar Miller and Damian Williams is there. And it's just like he never got a foothold on names that he projected to be better than. And so I look at, Tyler Allgeier, who has to play with Damian Williams, who also comps pretty close to his style. And I don't know. I'm looking at a guy who I'm excited about that I just have concerns about when I look at the opportunity. You know, Damian Williams is like 30 years old, but he only has 350 or less than 350 career carries. So he's still going to be a nuisance. I got really excited about Tyler Allgeier. I thought could be a possible starter, and now I've got my doubts. You know what I mean? I have my doubts that he's going to be able to be successful at the next level with his kind of slow grind, power push, you know, especially on a team that may not be guaranteed to be in the red zone where you really have to be to make this style work. So, yeah, all my excitement. And then I did this research and found Jay Ajayi, I have my own personal heartbreak in the past with Ajayi. So that's that, man. Single tier, man. I'll just poof into smoke. It's gone.
All right, Christian, next dude.
All right. I'll throw out I kind of did similarly to you. I have some that I'm really, really proud of. I think I did strong on, and then others that, you know, just something that I noticed and something that I felt needed to be addressed. So I'm going to throw one of those out right now. Maybe you can piggyback off me. Hopefully it'll be another combo here, but I'm doing Tyrion Davis Price.
Yep.
Possibly. Oh, it is.
Yeah, super
go.
synchronized.
Oh, baby.
All right.
Well, then, yeah, this makes it even better that it's going to be short. I mean, it's just simple, and this is not groundbreaking fantasy work here. But Kyle Shanahan always uses multiple guys in his running room. In 2019, he had 3 separate guys that all had 100 or more carries: Tevin Coleman, Raheem Mostert, Matt Breida. In 2020, it was Jeff Wilson with 126, Raheem Mostert with 104, Jarrett McKinnon with 81. So right there, almost at 100. In 2018, it was Matt Breida with 153, Alfred Morris. Reminders anybody, he was fun.
Yeah.
111 carries for him. And then Jeff Wilson had 66. So the only time Kyle Shanahan gets away from the model of trying to have 3 guys either at or right around 100 carries is if somebody gets hurt, like we saw last year, and that's where Mitchell's carries ended up being 207. That's almost guaranteed to go down. I love Elijah Mitchell. I hope he keeps crushing it with the opportunities that he gets, but I promise you that's going down. And Kyle Shanahan took TDP in the 3rd round. He's already the 2nd guy on the depth chart, in my opinion. He's fighting for that spot with Jeff Wilson, possibly. But I don't know. I'm sure he gets close to 100 carries if he stays healthy this year.
Yeah, man. Close to 100 carries. That sounds exciting. Yeah. So you've said a lot of things that are extremely true, and I'm going to tell you some more things that'll make you even more sad about TDP.
Okay.
I'm comping him to Kenyon Drake.
Okay.
So it's supposed to be a good thing, right? But Kenyon Drake came on to that Miami Dolphins team with Damian Williams and Jay Ajayi. And the Dolphins are like Philadelphia in the wide receiver room, but for the running back room. The Dolphins are really struggling there. But ultimately, right, even with Jay Ajayi out of town, he went to the Eagles pretty early in his career. You know, Kenyon Drake never really popped. He wasn't consistent at Alabama, and he wasn't consistent in the NFL. And Tyler Davis Price wasn't super consistent at LSU. And now he gets in the situation where he's going to be a rotational piece. He might be the red zone answer, you know. But then again, you never know what happens when Trey Lance starts running the ball. So could be awesome. Anyway, Kenyon Drake had to change teams, had to go to Arizona before he really took off. He didn't really have a ton of receiving work in college, but then that kind of became his thing in the NFL. So are we hoping that Ty Davis Price can rebrand himself to become an effective fantasy weapon? I don't really know. We have 3 years where he's got a sub 5-yard average, only 28 catches in that time frame, and a 4.5% TD rate. It just kind of made a sad face out of my. I was pretty excited about Ty Davis Price a little bit too, but you can't lie, man, when you compare dude to Kenyon Drake.
Well, I do got to shout out Danny, who did suggest to me to, instead of TDP, to call him TDAP.
Oh.
So
okay.
we can go TDAP from now on. I like that. But yeah, let's kick it back to you, Christian, for your next dude.
Yeah, I'll keep it in strange, almost unseeable running back rooms. Let's go to Pierre Strong, one of my boys over in New England. He's a 4th-round pick this year. Ramondre Stevenson and James White were both taken in the 4th round, as well as Damian Harris taken slightly before them in the 3rd round. All 3 of those dudes had 100 touches by year 3 at the very least. White got it done in the air more than the other 2 guys, but the other guys did it mostly on the ground. And I think that's a piece of the offense that New England was missing last year. I talked about it in a podcast a few weeks ago. The Patriots' touches by James White or somebody in a similar change-up style to their big, beefy guys like Harris and Stevenson, they only had 47 touches by guys like that in 2021 compared to 222 in 2020. So obviously that's huge. The other missing piece was the receiving targets for running backs. Only had 102 targets to any running backs last season. Compare that to 118 in 2020, and it jumps even higher to 164 in 2019 and 171 in 2018. That's obviously Tom Brady territory, but he likes to target more. But you can tell that they want to get back to that offense. And James White was the leader of those targets in 18 and 19, putting most of that on his back. He had 120 targets in one of those years. I believe it was 2018. I think the plan is to try to recreate James White with Pierre Strong and balance him out with Ramondre Stevenson and Damian Harris. He's similar in size. He's 2 inches taller, a couple pounds heavier. And before I hear everybody start saying, but Christian, Pierre Strong doesn't catch the ball. Pierre Strong had 56 catches in college, and James White only had 73. So they turned James White into a PPR machine. And with Strong having a 4th-round price tag, which is pretty high for running backs, and then also right around where New England likes to take their running backs that they end up starting with, Stevenson, White, Harris, all 3 of those guys were in those rounds. I think Strong's going to have a chance here to have a pretty good rookie season because he changes the play style to something that they didn't have. And I think James White's on the way out the door. They're keeping him around just because they love the guy, obviously. But I think this is either his last year or he may get cut before the season even starts. But I really do think the plan is to turn Pierre Strong into James White.
Okay, well, this one's I'm just doing a hit and run. I hope it gives you time to catch your breath. And this isn't very deep, but I'm going to say I like David Bell. I think we all know that I like David Bell.
Yeah, you're wearing a shirt.
I'm wearing the Ring the Bell shirt. And I'm kind of sick of people talking about how slow this guy is. Of course, he runs a 4.65, but he did a lot of great things in college, like be the Big Ten Receiver of the Year twice and kick ass, on a team with Rondell Moore on it, as a true freshman. He just went in there and dominated, and he's just an above average football player, even though he has below average speed. But if I'm comparing him to some other guys that had below average speed, there's some pretty solid names to be listed. And I'm talking about you, DeAndre Hopkins. I'm talking about you, Michael Thomas. You 4.57 guys. I believe David Bell's capable of running a 4.57. Okay. But if you don't believe that, and you want a more realistic comp, and for me to stop talking so much, too bad. But not draft capital wise, but just pure metrics. He kind of is a Rashaad Higgins type, and he goes to Cleveland, where Rashaad Higgins has done Rashaad Higgins things. So if he can slot right into that style role, then I think he's going to be just fine. He has a better draft capital than Higgins by quite a bit. He was a 3rd-round pick, so I think you throw it in there, you see what happens. I'm pretty excited about him. Let's not forget that Cooper Kupp ran a 4.62, so whatever. I'm sick of you talking about it. Don't need the speed. Not. I don't know who I was pointing at there, but keep talking about it. I love it.
You know who you are.
I'm comping him now to Cooper Kupp. No, I'm just joking. But no, extremely productive.
Wide receiver 1 this year. You heard it here first from Daniel.
So, I think, dude, I'm telling you, I've already said that he's going to be the wide receiver 1 on his team. You know, Amari Cooper's just a decoy. So,
I like it.
Here we go.
All right. Christian, what you got?
All right. Let's talk some running backs here. Let's go Hassan Haskins. This may not pan out for the rookie year necessarily, so it's a bit kind of not what we're trying to do necessarily, because I'm projecting into the future. This is rookie expectations, but whatever. I think his situation is absolutely fantastic. Derrick Henry's last full season, there were a total of 90 carries shared between 4 different running backs outside of Derrick Henry's carries. I think in 2021, the Titans were shown that can't happen. King Henry's not unstoppable. He got hurt, and then they didn't have a reliable number 2 behind him. They'd moved on with Donta Foreman, and he was fine. Little fun fact, he actually averaged the same yards per carry as Derrick Henry.
Oof.
For whatever that's worth. Even after Derrick Henry went down, though, the Titans still managed to end the year with the most rushing attempts in the entire league. And that's probably not going to stop. But if you look at Derrick Henry, combining college and NFL carries, he's carried the ball in an actual game 2,003 times.
Yeah.
That's insane. He's 28 years old. That's a year after the 27 feared age that we talk about in the running back longevity episode. And his carries are way more than almost everybody else outside of Ezekiel Elliott. And, you know, he just dealt with a foot injury that took him out for 9 games last season. And even when he came back in the playoffs, he didn't look quite right. Obviously, he's got a whole year to recover now, and I hope Derrick Henry is healthy. The league is more fun when Derrick Henry is running around crushing it. But
not our fantasy leagues.
Listen, homie, your ass is in the NFC. Over here in the AFC, when it becomes playoff time, it is not more fun when Derrick Henry is healthy.
That's fair.
I'm just saying.
But projecting into the future with Haskins, he should be on your radar. All those factors of Derrick Henry, but these factors with Mike Vrabel are also important. The Titans have never, under Mike Vrabel, ended a season outside the top 10 in carries. They are always in the top 10 in the amount of carries. Derrick Henry's getting old. He's going to be out of there sooner rather than later, unfortunately. Hassan Haskins is already there, and there's a reason they chose to draft a bigger back at 228 pounds instead of a smaller guy to kind of offset Henry. The plan is, in my opinion, that Henry's going to be moving out the door eventually within the next couple years, and Hassan Haskins, they're hoping, is going to take that role over. And I think he should be on your radar for pure chance of opportunity, because he's on a team that runs the ball more than anyone. So just take a shot on him.
Well, I'm going to bring up a running back for a team that was in the bottom 8 for carries last year. Yes, that's right. They had the 9th fewest carries in the league. That was the Houston Texans. And Damian Pierce is my next player to talk about. Does that tickle any of your scratches over there?
No, I didn't have him.
Apparently, I went out to hype these guys up, but I just came out with 2 buckets of ice water and started throwing it on guys because I'm putting him down. I have his comp as DJ Dallas.
Ooh.
And it's like pretty spot on. Size, metrics, college production. It is... And he doesn't have a strong set of peers. If you look at any of the guys that matched up with his size and his metrics, especially, you know, he never got really off the ground, never even hit 600 yards, never reached 20 catches in a single season. It's just hard to name any successful pros that match up with this guy. And when you look at the team he ended up on, they finished last year with the league worst 3.4 yards per carry as a team. And so you slot him in and you're like, hey, you're going to be fine, right? You're the guy. You know, we want you to lead our backfield. Not really seeing it happen. So it's just hard to overlook some of these concerns. You know, 4 years as a starter, and he did have a 5.5 yard average, but the actual productivity didn't really hit there. You know, he actually played with LaMichael Pirine in college and was bested by him 2 years in a row. So I know you had that queued up, man. I should have let you have it.
No.
But yeah, even though they're similar prospects, I think that Damian Pierce should do better. But, and this is a but, if Marlon Mack is healthy, then I'm pretty sure that Damian Pierce will be the next Gator to bite the dust in fantasy football.
All right. I'm sticking in the running back room. Let's go with Zamir White. Las Vegas Raiders, they have a new coach, Josh McDaniels. Since 2012, a Josh McDaniels team has been inside the top 10 for rushing yards 7 times. That's 7 out of 10 times. It's pretty good odds. The 2 times he finished outside the top 10 were 18th twice, weirdly, and then 30th. So they seem like kind of more outlier years with how far off he dropped. And then you look at Josh Jacobs, and his average yards per game has dropped every year that he's been in the league. 88.5 yards per game his rookie season, 71 yards per game in year 2, and 58.1 in year 3. So it's steadily going down. And Josh McDaniels is coming from New England, a place that is famous for never paying running backs. They work them on their rookie contract, and they'll sign guys to cheap deals, but they're never going to pay superstars. They already declined Jacobs' 5th-year option. And guess who else is a free agent at the end of this year? Kenyon Drake is also a free agent at the end of this year, and he's still on that team. All signs involving Josh McDaniels point to the Raiders moving to a running back by committee this year. They're not going to fuck around and use Josh Jacobs. I think Josh Jacobs' carries go down. They hope to see his efficiency go up. But that 3-headed backfield of Jacobs, Drake, and Zamir White would be really, really good. And they have Brandon Bolden, I believe, is the 4th guy there. So I wouldn't even be shocked if you saw a trade for Josh Jacobs, if you got the right kind of compensation back for Oakland or Vegas. So Zamir White is he's another guy on the radar that you need to be paying attention to, see where he falls, because why not grab the youngest guy in the room if it's going to be a running back by committee type thing, and then you hope he pops and these other 2 guys leave, and now he's the top dog for you for a couple of years. I don't necessarily know if Zamir White's going to be a superstar or anything like that, but if you can grab the top dog in one of these running back by committees, they can help you as a healthy flex piece. And there always is one. In San Francisco, there's always one guy that gets more carries than everybody else. In New England, there's always one guy that gets more carries than everybody else. Not many more necessarily, but there is a lead dog. And I think if you can grab Zamir White in your drafts this year, he could be that guy. And then he could end up being a superstar. He's got the kind of ability for it. I just don't necessarily know that it'll translate. But you can at least get a guy that's going to have chances to produce.
All right, I'm gonna hit the fireworks here before we get to the end. You know, I won't save it for the finale, but I'm going with James Cook.
Oh,
okay, James Cook. I don't know. Ooh, this got pretty intense with James Cook. I'll just say for a little bit of the metrics and the draft capital and all of that. that he is the highest drafted player under 200 pounds in the last 10 years.
Ooh.
So keep that in mind. That's pretty impressive. And actually, there are only two other running backs that made the top 2 rounds that weighed 205 or less. And that was Ronald Jones and Christian McCaffrey. So it kind of tells you how people feel about James Cook. And I know how AJ feels about him, right? You can say something about how Khalil Shakir ain't getting them slot catches because that's James Cook's work. And so if you look at the college production, though, James Cook has nothing in common with what Joe did at USC or what Christian McCaffrey did. So what you really want to do is look at the metrics and forget the draft capital because it doesn't translate to a comp. So metrics wise, I'm going with Nyheim Hines, and that's a pretty solid comparison. I did mention that college production wise, it doesn't really match, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But it's just a weird situation. Nyheim Hines walked into a role where the Marlon Mack was there, Jordan Wilkins was there. And if you look at them and compare them to Singletary and Zach Moss, kind of just the cloudiness of that whole situation, it really translates to what I'm seeing in Buffalo. If you do a little digging, you'll see that back in 2016, the Colts had a target share for the running back that was 11.1%. And then I'm omitting the 2017 year because Andrew Luck didn't play. But if you skip back to the rookie year of Nyheim Hines in 2018, that target share went up to 16.7%. And 12.7% of the target share belonged to Nyheim Hines. So I'm kind of comparing like a kind of elite, high caliber quarterback situation between Andrew Luck and Josh Allen, even though it's not really, it's not really the same thing. But it shows how a team like Buffalo, who has a target share last year of 13% to the running back, can make room and adjust and incorporate a pass catching running back. So that's kind of what I'm looking forward to Buffalo doing. So that's the whole thing. We all know that they had their eyes on JD McKiss, and they wanted a serious target load headed that way. And since they weren't able to get it, they just went for James Cook, plug him right in. You've already mentioned Cole Beasley. Those targets are going somewhere. Only 82 targets to the running backs last year. That's very low compared to most teams. So he slots right in there and gives them a chance to kick ass and take names. Now, there was only limited production at Georgia with James Cook. So you're looking at a peak of 27 catches. So yeah, that's 1.64 catches per game over his 3 years. Nyheim Hines had more like 2.3. So Hines was more of a traditional pass catching back in college. So he has that advantage over him. But if I'm switching gears completely, you can see that Nyheim Hines went from a more pass catching forward role, peaking his sophomore year at 43 catches. And then that got shut down completely his last year in college when he became more of the predominant rusher and less of a pass catcher for North Carolina. And that reminds me a lot of my friend Tyler Beatty, who was premier pass catching when Larry Roundtree was there, but then took over the rushing role at Mizzou his last year. And the metrics for those guys are pretty locked solid too.
Let's get it. All right, Christian. I feel like you got the twofer left, right?
Yeah, all I've got left. I got two guys here. They both play for the same team, and they both catch the ball.
Wait,
so
I got you. Speaking of Nyheim Hines.
There we go. Yeah, I've got Alec Pierce and Jelani Woods, lumped them together. They kind of track similarly stat-wise, so it didn't make sense to separate them. But Frank Reich's been looking for weapons since he got to Indy. He's had only 2,000-yard receivers in his 4 seasons in Indy. One of those was last season with Michael Pittman. And Michael Pittman was their receiving game as far as the wide receivers were concerned. He had 1,082 yards. The next closest guy was Zach Pascal with 384. So he outproduced him by 700 yards. So Frank Reich has found his one, I think. Michael Pittman proved that he can be that guy, and he wants a reliable 2, and that's Alec Pierce. He's going to constantly be on the field. He's literally already number 2 on the depth chart. Mike Strachan, anyone?
Hell yeah! Loves me some Mike Strachan, dude.
Desmond Patman is on that roster. Ashton Doolin is another guy on that roster. So, yeah, Alec Pierce is the number 2 receiver in Indianapolis already, unless they trade for Terry McLaurin. Jelani Woods has a little bit more competition in the tight end room. One of our RDR favorites, Kylan Granson, is still there. Mo Alley Cox is still there, but neither one of those guys are unbeatable for Jelani Woods to see the field. But the other factor here is Matt Ryan. And first of all, Matt Ryan is kind of underrated, I think. He's just been consistent his entire career. First of all, we just saw Matt Ryan with a super athletic tight end. Now he gets another one with Jelani Woods. He's not quite the level of Pitts, obviously. I'm not saying that. But he's got a similar athletic profile. He can be that type of guy for Matt Ryan. But Matt Ryan has some really interesting stats. First of all, Matt Ryan has never had a season without a 1,000-yard receiver. It's never happened. Last year was the first year that that receiver was a tight end, but it's Kyle Pitts, so I'm counting it. But he's also never had a season where his number 2 receiver didn't at least get 500 yards. And that I don't mean Kyle Pitts and Russell Gage. I literally mean his number 1 wide receiver and his number 2 have always been 1,000 yards and at least 500 yards for the second guy. And it's actually way better than that because the average is 757 yards for his number 2 receiver. Only 3 of his 14 seasons has Matt Ryan had a tight end not reach 500 yards. So what that says to me is that you're going to get production out of your tight end in Indianapolis, and you're going to get production out of your number 2 wide receiver. And because Woods has a path to being the starter, and Alec Pierce is already, in my opinion, the number 2, I literally don't see who else is going to beat him for that job.
Pierce Campbell.
But Paris Campbell would play the slot, right?
Yeah.
So you get Pittman on the outside, Pierce on the outside, and then Campbell in the slot. And so maybe Campbell takes away his targets, and it doesn't quite reach that level. But I think Pierce's lack of competition makes him an instant target. And I think Woods should be on everyone's radar as well, just because he could end up taking that role. They didn't pay Mo Alley Cox a lot of money. Kylan Granson really didn't do anything last year. And whoever's catching balls from Matt Ryan, I want at least a small piece of, if not an even bigger piece. The only worry here is that Matt Ryan's probably gone in the next 2 years. So then you got to see what the Colts do at QB. But I'm pretty excited for the Alec Pierce rookie season, and I think people are sleeping on him still a little bit.
Yeah, this is the last guy.
All right, let's go.
Okay, yeah. Speaking of Michael Pittman, I'm going with Treylon Burks.
Okay.
So, yeah, size and speed comp pretty much, right there with Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman is a few inches taller, but one ran a 4.52, one ran a 4.55, similar broad jump, but what not. The big difference is the draft capital. Treylon Burks was drafted quite a bit higher, but, when you see how the run went this year, you can kind of, he essentially was the same X number wide receiver drafted. It was just in the first round. So, but if you want like a draft capital comp with the size and the speed for Treylon Burks, if you want to be pure like that, you're going to have to go get your tires changed. Make sure that your Laquan treads well. You know what I mean?
Oh shit!
Gross. But all these guys had, that huge last year of college with double-digit touchdowns and just went over the top. But the real reason I comp him to Michael Pittman is that, even though Michael Pittman only played 13 games as a rookie, he was fourth on his team in targets. And, the established veteran, T.Y. Hilton, had the lead role. And I really do think that Treylon Burks is going to come in and take a back seat to Robert Woods. So that's where I'm at with him. Nothing crazy. I just think that he has that long-term potential to be a superstar, but I do think that people are going to be a little disappointed this rookie year. Okay. It's going to take him a little bit of time to get established, on a run-first offense similar to Indianapolis. I'm drawing a lot of parallels with the Indianapolis, the Michael Pittman situation. So that's where I'm at. I don't have anything long-winded for Treylon Burks. I just want you to know that he apparently is not long-winded. A lot of asthma issues going on.
Well, I guess that is the episode, boys. We will sign out here, and we'll see y'all next week.
Thanks for listening. Thanks more for watching. Subscribe. Hit the smell. And
ring the bell. You literally have the shirt on.
Oh, yeah. Hit this. Ring the bell.
Ring the bell.
And comment, tweet at us or whatever.